All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about Clause 6 of the ISO 27001 standard. This isn't just another box-ticking exercise. It is literally the architect's blueprint for your entire information security management system. It's the plan that makes sure everything you do for security is deliberate, effective, and actually works.
So let me start with the big question, one that really gets to the core of this whole thing. When you really boil it down, what's the one thing that separates an organization that can handle security threats from one that just can't? I'll tell you, it's not about having the flashiest new tech or the biggest budget.
The answer, at least according to the standard, is right here. It's a documented, deliberate plan. It's the conscious decision to architect how you're going to manage information security. That's what transforms a bunch of random security activities into a system, something coherent and powerful.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to walk through Clause 6 step by step. We'll start with why we even bother with planning. Then we'll get into the real meat of it, risk assessment and treatment. After that, we'll talk about setting goals you can actually hit, and we'll wrap up with how to handle change without breaking everything.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1. This part really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. It's all about getting to the why behind this whole planning phase.
Look, the standard is super clear here. Planning is not busy work. The whole point is to make sure your security system actually does what it's supposed to do. Protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's about getting ahead of problems, preventing things like breaches or compliance fails. And maybe most importantly, it's about building a system that's always getting better. That's the engine that drives the whole thing.
Okay, so with that foundation in place, you can see how it leads directly into the risk assessment process. And let me be clear, this part is not optional. It is a mandatory, formal process that is the analytical heart of your entire security system. What I love about this is how it breaks down what can feel like a huge, scary process into a really logical sequence. First, you set the rules of the game with your risk criteria. Then, you actually go out and find the risks, and crucially, assign an owner to each one. Next, you analyze them. You ask, how bad could this be, and how likely is it to happen? And finally, you evaluate all that to figure out which fires you need to put out first. So here's the crucial point. You can't just start assessing risk out of the blue. You have to define your criteria first. This basically means your organization has to decide what level of risk it's willing to live with. This step is what makes sure your results are, as the standard puts it, consistent, valid, and comparable every single time. And this right here, this is the golden rule for anyone working with this standard. You see that phrase, shall retain documented information, everywhere for a reason. It means if it's not written down, it didn't happen, period. Your entire process, from the rules you set to the risks you find, it all has to be documented. All right, so you've systematically figured out what your risks are. The next logical question is, what are you going to do about them? That's where the risk treatment process comes in. This is where all that analysis turns into a real plan of action. This process is your roadmap from risk to resolution. You start by picking how you're going to handle the risk. Maybe you mitigate it, maybe you avoid it, maybe you just accept it. Then you figure out all the controls you need to make that happen. You check those against the big list in Annex A to make sure you haven't missed anything, create that all-important statement of application, write up a detailed plan, and finally get the risk owner to sign off on it.
The Statement of Applicability, or SOA. Honestly, this might be one of the most important documents in your entire ISMS. Think of it as the master document that connects the dots between your risks, your controls, and whether they're actually up and running. If an auditor shows up, you can bet this is one of the first things they're going to ask for.
And this is exactly what has to be in that SOA. It's not enough to just say, we picked these controls. You have to explain why you picked them, you have to state their implementation status, and just as important, you have to justify why you left out any of the controls from Annex A. That last part is key. It shows you made a deliberate, risk-based decision and didn't just forget something. And hey, for those of you who work in broader enterprise risk, this little note from the standard is for you. It's basically saying that this whole process isn't some weird, isolated thing. It's designed to line up perfectly with ISO 31000, which is the international gold standard for risk management. So it all fits together nicely. Okay, time to shift gears a bit. We've been talking a lot about reacting to risks. Now let's get proactive. Let's talk about how you define what success even looks like for your security program by setting clear, measurable objectives. So your security objectives can't be fuzzy. Vague wishes like, we want to be more secure. No way. The standard says they have to be real and tied directly into your system. That means they've got to line up with your main policy, be measurable, link back to your risk assessment, and of course, they need to be monitored, communicated, updated, and, you guessed it, documented.
And this table, it's basically the playbook for making those objectives a reality. For every single objective you set, the standard says you have to figure out what you're going to do, what resources you'll need, who's responsible for it, when it'll be done, and how you're going to measure if you succeeded. This is what turns a simple goal into an actual project.
All right, our final section. We're talking about something that's super important but often gets forgotten in the planning stage: how to handle change. Because your ISMS isn't a statue you build once, it's a living thing that has to evolve. And this part tells you how to do that without causing a disaster.
The takeaway here is so important. Change is going to happen, but chaos is optional. It doesn't matter if you're rolling out new software, changing a key process, or bringing on a new vendor. Any change that impacts the ISMS has to be planned and controlled. This is how you stop yourself from accidentally opening up a huge new security hole.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Clause 6 gives you the complete blueprint to build your information security management system. But, a blueprint is just the start. The real test, and the whole reason we do all this planning, is to build something that doesn't just work today, but is designed from the ground up to adapt and evolve as the threats out there change tomorrow. Planning isn't a one-time thing. It's the foundation for staying ahead of the game.